the word investment pops up in more and more conversations now when it comes to open source contributions, and also the other side of risks of, not doing it right or not doing it at all. That actually does have risk, and that does have cost associated to as well. But we haven't really, in my experience, talked about these things much in the past, or where the conversations happened, they weren't as open as they could have been, just so that we can all learn from each other. So I think that this kind of sounds like something that's a strong connection point between InnerSource and open source in terms of the organizational internal processes and decision making. Because when it comes to open source, that for contributing companies and organizations, that does have a huge internal component to it. There's no way around that. There are a lot of decisions that have to happen inside a company first, and then a lot of transformation process and all those kind of things. And at one point, that will all boil down to budget. I think it would be beneficial to be able to point people to some resources in terms of how to start figuring that out.
No, I would agree, but and I'll add one more thing actually, which complicates matters, I think, in terms of the discussion. And it's sparked in my head when you mentioned this idea that sometimes it comes it down to a principled or almost religious conversation about what we should do. And it's sometimes when you are talking about that value, I find one thing I've noted more recently is that sometimes the discussion about the cost of doing it can sometimes also not be realistic, right? So and even in terms of the effort and time involved in, if you are going to contribute to either open source or you're going to start embarking on inner source, there is a cost to collaboration. And oftentimes that cost is an upfront cost, and you may not see the benefits till sometime down the road. So not only in terms of the budget, but also in terms of the kind of temporal nature of when you see the return. That's something that I think is important to bring up as well. And so really, when we are talking about the fact that people make decisions on the back of whatever value proposition you're bringing forward, it's really important to set expectations as well, that these things don't come for free. Like, you don't just turn around and go, well, now I'm doing, like, I just tossed it over the wall and now I'm contributing to open source, and maintenance will be easy from now on because all those people out there will just maintain it for me. Like, obviously we know that doesn't happen. Neither does it happen in the inner source world. I'll toss it out into the internal intranet and everyone will suddenly start country. Like, doesn't work either. And so, but in people's enthusiasm to create a value proposition for the value of doing this, they sometimes stop. They don't talk about that initial cost as well of doing collaboration well. So I'm just going to put that in as a gotcha, because it comes back to bite you if you don't set up the right expectations about that either. Like, and I will say, in as much as it's a shortcut that's taken in the open source world, it's taken in the inner source world, things like documentation, things like setting up the processes to review first timer commits, like, these are not things that expert developers necessarily jump up and start, throwing their hands in the air going, I want to do that. So that cost can sometimes be significant, both in terms of the time, but also in terms of getting the right people to do it, and getting them to want to do it. So and then this idea of how long does it take to get the benefit? These are conversations that we all need to have in the open, because I think it would benefit us all to be a little bit more transparent about that with folks that are coming to these kind of decisions.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think there are a lot of misconceptions, probably both to inner source and open source, because when you talk about the maintenance cost, that upfront cost, people, product management don't always factor that in, or they associate cost to contribution. Like, it will cost me headcount to go and contribute to this open source or inner source project for that matter. However, I don't think they put a dollar or euro sign next to not contributing back and driving the project to the ground, which I did see in the past, because it becomes unmaintainable if you practically creating an internal fork. So deviate from the upstream version and then start adding things to it. And then you merge it together with how the upstream project has newer and newer releases and changes. And then at one point, you will not be able to merge. There will be features, functionality, whatever in the upstream code base that you will not be able to put in your internal version because it just deviated too much. I've seen this before happening, and the company started to do the same thing with another project. And I was like, hands up in the air and like waving like crazy, like the train is coming towards you, like get off the track. And no, they were just running towards collision. That's because of the other misconception of we are saving money on not contributing back because that's headcount and delay in time and uncertainties and all those kind of things. And no one actually factors in the actual cost of maintaining a fork and how that cost goes up exponentially at one point. And I think that's the other side of misconceptions.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting one, and sometimes I think about the general trends in society more generally about thinking about sustainability, and I think about like it's really that conversation, isn't it? It's like how do you make technology more sustainable? Like there is this notion that you buy it once and you're done. I mean, there used to be, I think, a notion by some people that you'd buy it or you build it, and I'm done. And like we all know that that's not the case, and it's really about creating something that is easy to maintain and sustain within the organization, external to the organization. Getting those principles right can set you up for the future.